All right, good morning. Namaste. Let's start the class with some mantras. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha Tatsavitra Varenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehna Bhunaktu Seviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. So VivekaChudamani. Let's open our books. We ended our class with verse number 417. And some of the books it could be 416. So this body is woven from the fiber of prarabdha. And prarabdha is what? That part of karmas which we have brought from the sanchit, the storehouse. So, and the knower of the truth is not concerned whether it drops off or remains as the garland around the cow's neck, for his thoughts are reposed in Brahma and absorbed in the bliss. Because total identification with the Brahma and disidentification from these bodies, physical body, subtle body, causal body, he has dropped them all off. Okay. So now let's look at the next verse. (418). अखंड आनंदम आत्मनम विज्ञाये स्वरूप रूपतः किम इच्छन कस्य हेतो वा देहम उष्णाति तत्वित. Akhand Anandam Atmanam, the Atma which is indivisible bliss. Okay, so it's like a Akhand, there's no parts. It's not that it's a bliss there and bliss not there. It's Akhand bliss. Vigyaye, having known. Swarup Ruptaha, as his own self. Kim means what? Ichan, desiring. Kasya hetoho, for whose purpose? Va means or, deham, body. Ushnati, should cherish. Tatvavit, the knower of the truth. Having known the Atma, which is unbroken bliss, to be his very own self, with what motive or for whom is the body to be cherished? By the knower of the truth. So when you know the highest, when you know the absolute, when you really have experienced the reality, so Shankaracharya ji is continuing the same argument as in the previous verse, in rejecting the physical body or disidentifying from the physical body. So he says, having realized his own essential self to be the nature of unbroken and infinite bliss, then desiring what from this body? What is the purpose left? Because through the body, the bliss or the joy which we feel, the happiness we feel, that is so little. It is so minuscule compared to the bliss, unbroken bliss of the Atma. So that's why he is in a question, he is making us aware. Desiring what? What do you really want from this body? Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a similar verse. Yagvalkya, he says over there, it's also in a question form. Kim ichan kasya kamaye shariram manush ujret. Okay? So this body, through body, you can have only a glimpse of the joy. The Atma is all joy. There's nothing but joy in the Atma. So after realizing it, why do you run after that? You won't. Then in the next verse, the benefits of this reality, this experience. Samsiddhasya phalam tu etat jivan muktasya yogina bahiyantaha sada anandras aswadanam atmani. Samsiddhasya, for the perfected, or after attainment of the perfection. Phalam, result, fruit. Tu means indeed. Etat, this. Jivan muktasya yogina, for the yogi who is liberated while living. We often use this word jivan mukta. So in the body, among us, but liberated. Jivan mukta. Bahi, outside, like external. Antaha, within, internal. Sada nand ras aswadanam, the experience of the essence of a perpetual bliss. Sadanand, Atmani, in himself, the perfected yogi, who is a Jivan Mukta. So Jivan Mukta is a yogi, and a yogi is a Jivan Mukta. Okay, these are synonyms. So the perfected yogi, who is a Jivan Mukta, gets this as a result within and without, internal and external. He enjoys eternal bliss. Sada Ananda. So the fulfillment of the life has been achieved. A person who has let go of the shackles of his finite experiences as the ego. This person, this yogi, is no more bound by the chains of the physical passions or mental pangs or intellectual agitations. What will he gain in life by such an experience, a temporary experience? So this is what Shankaracharya is saying. An individual is constantly experiencing the bliss, because this is the nature of the self, within and without. So once the highest happiness is gained, other lesser objects of happiness are of no concern. No concern. Does not get disturbed. Totally blissful, totally peaceful all the time. Vairagasya phalam bodha bodhasya uprati phalam swa anand anubhavat shanti eshaha eva uprate phalam. Vairagasya, dispassion, vairag, detachment. Phalam, the fruit. Bodha, the knowledge. Bodhasya, of knowledge. Uprati, uprati is withdrawal. Withdrawal from the sense pleasures, because already got the higher pleasure. Uprati. Phalam, reward. Swa anand anubhavat, from the experience of the blissful self. Shanti, peace. Eshaha, this. Ev means alone. uprate phalam, the fruit of withdrawal. Okay. The fruit of dispassion is knowledge. That of knowledge is a withdrawal from sense pleasure. The fruit of this withdrawal is the experience of the blissful self. The peace is the result of the experience. The results which will accrue to the personality as an individual starts his sadhana are enumerated here in a very logical sequence. Very logical sequence. Because when a person analyzes the finite nature of the joys of the world, he will very easily reject the lesser field of gratifications. Only then he can see that, hey, I have a permanent satisfaction in the higher. So that's why he said the detachment, vairagasya phalam bodho. And this vairag is what? Detachment from the unreal is called vairag. We learned that in the beginning of the scripture. Detachment from the unreal, detachment from the temporary is vairag. So a person who has vairag will drift away from the world of acquisition and pleasure. The little things, the temporary things, you just don't sweat for those. So that means the mind has been released from the load of his engagement with the world of sense objects. You don't run after it. And only then this mind will become quiet. Because if mind keeps on running after the sensuous enjoyments, mind can never be peaceful. And this is only a relatively calm, not absolutely calm yet. Because this kind of a relative quiet mind will produce a more brilliant intellect. Because if mind is agitated, forget about absorbing any knowledge. So with this brilliance, the student discovers a greater depth of understanding of the scriptures. And this is the reason when we start to study something like this, we recite some mantras. We are bringing our scattered mind into a focus. So the knowledge of the true nature of the self becomes fuller and more productive of the results. So that's why he said the vairagya gives bodh, the knowledge. That is the purpose of vairagya. So that we can have a clear and full understanding of the nature of the self. And when this knowledge enters the level of our understanding, then gratification in the old fields of sense indulgences automatically stops. Okay, when you have seen the higher, the lower drops off. And this dropping or the self withdrawal is called uprati. You don't have any interest in the lower. You don't have any interest in the mundane. When your intellect understands what is higher, what is real, versus what is temporary and what is unreal, you don't have any interest in it. So when as a result of the knowledge of the higher, the mind withdraws itself from the fields of agitation, it becomes more and more calm. Calmer the mind, greater the happiness. Remember that. Happiness is a subjective condition wherein the mind is not over agitated. So when there's experience of the self within, there is peace. The peace that passeth all understanding. and this great peace felt within. It's not because of something gained in the outside, not because of some object. It is because of the very essential nature of the self. And this is the reward. Let me read it again. The fruit of dispassion is knowledge. That's why they say that detach from this temporary so that you have a knowledge. And that of knowledge is withdrawal from sensual pleasures. Because that knowledge you have, what is real, what is unreal. And the fruit of this withdrawal is the experience of the blissful self. And peace is the result of the experience. See how logically it has been explained by this great Acharya. How beautifully. But then ultimately we have to do the sadhana. We have to stay on top of this sequence if we want to attain peace and the bliss. Let's look at next one. Yadi utra abhava purva purvam tu nishphalam nivritihi parmatripti anandaha anupama swatah. Yadi means if. Utra abhava. There is the absence of the succeeding stages. Abhav. Abhav means absence. Purva purvam, the preceding ones. Tu means but, nishphalam, fruitless, useless. Nivriti, cessation. Parmatripti, supreme satisfaction. Anand, bliss. Anupamaha, unequaled. See, there's a upamaha and anupama. Okay, unequaled. Swata, as a matter of course. When there are no succeeding stages, the preceding ones are useless. So that means that it has to be a perfect series. Automatic cessation of the objective world, supreme satisfaction, and unequaled bliss follow as a matter of course. Okay. In the previous verse, we saw the chain, logical chain, a sequence, or you can call it a chain of cause and effect, which is seen in a life of a true seeker. That was the last verse. Now in this verse, Shankaracharya ji is saying, if there is an absence of the succeeding stages, then the preceding ones are futile. If you have not learned how to write the alphabet, you won't be able to make the sentences. Okay, the sequence has to be followed properly. If you have objective knowledge but no vairagya, that knowledge is of no use. If you are practicing self-withdrawal, but if it does not lead to subjective knowledge of the higher, the self-withdrawal is only escapism. So each succeeding stage can be fruitful only if you have cultivated the noble qualities of the earlier. Remember that. Because it's only as a result of all these developments in ourselves that we come to a point of a complete nivriti from the worldly activities. The culmination. But if we just run away, we just had some kind of a fight with somebody and we want to become a sannyasi, or if we really don't want to work hard to stand on our feet and we just become a sannyasi, That is called the escapism. It's not out of knowledge, it's out of laziness. So religion in its highest realms is reserved only for the evolved persons who have cultivated through sustained self-effort. Because for Vairagya also you need self-effort. For Bodha also you need self-effort. For the whole sadhana you need the self-effort. This evolution or this moving upward is not accidental. It is a very logical development and it has its stages. So only a person who has gone through all the disciplines indicated in the previous verse will really come to live a life of complete detachment from the world. And will experience the bliss that is incomparable, which doesn't have any upama. It's anupama, incomparable. And when will it come? How will it come? Shankaracharya ji is saying this state of complete bliss and satisfaction comes swataha, naturally. Our job is to do this sadhana and outcome happens naturally. Swataha. As a result of all the previous disciplines. That is the final reward of the spiritual seeker. And that is the great experience. And that experience he is mentioning in the next verse to us. He says, Drishtrihi dukheshu anudvegaha vidyayaha prastutam phalam yat kritam bhranti velayam nanakaram jugupsitam paschat nara viveken tat katham kartum aharati. Drishtri dukheshu, towards worldly sorrows experienced. Anudvegaha, indifference. Vidyaya, of knowledge. Prastutam, the result in question. Phalam, the result. So it's like a preeminent fruit of knowledge. Yat means which, kritam, done, bhranti velayam, in delusion, in bhranti. Nana karam, various deeds. Jugupsitam, vile, disgusting. Paschat, thereafter. Naraha, a person. Viveken, on discrimination. That means that, katham, how. Kartum aharati, can be performed. The result of knowledge is absence of regret towards worldly sorrows. Okay. How can he who performs the disgusting deeds and delusion perform them again when he possesses discrimination? So when the final beatitude is experienced, a person is unruffled by painful experiences. He may have to live in the world. So that means the pinpricks that he is conscious of at the physical, mental, intellectual levels, those are called like a jerks in the life. They will never disturb him. It could be at the physical level, illness. It could be at the mental level also, but it will not disturb him. And this is indeed the effect of the knowledge that has come to him as a result of the sadhana. So not only is this person is unaffected by the sorrows of the body, mind, and intellect, but he will no more pursue the disgusting and the repulsive actions which he may have performed previously. Because he says, that person was in the state of delusion at that time, Bhranti. Because there was a lot of misconceptions in his mind, and out of those misconceptions, he did something, said something, and he is reaping the fruit of it, but he's not affected by it now. Because when we consider ourselves the body, and we want to become more and more comforts for the body, we do live in this world of competition. Sometimes people use the fair means or foul means to try to fulfill all the desires. That is when we become the slave to our sense organs and the demands of our sense organs. So that is the delusion he is talking about. But how can a person who has regained his discriminative power, Vivek Shakti, to the fullest, continue with his vile deeds? He will not. Anything he did in the past, he learned from it, and no more he is doing it. That understanding is there. See, this is almost like when a person is drunk, will say wrong things, will do wrong actions. The same way when we are drunk with the vasanas and passions of the body, the individual during his days of ignorance might have perpetrated many shameful acts of viciousness. But he will not continue them anymore because of the realization, the experience of the unfoldment from this spiritual practice. Okay, this is what he is talking about. Now in the next verse, Vidya phalam seyat astaha nivriti pravriti agyan phalam tat ikshitam tat agyaho yat mrid trishnika adau na uchet vidam drishti phalam kim asmat. Vidya phalam, the result of knowledge. Vidya ka phal. Sayat should be astaha, from the unreal. Nivriti, turning away. Pravriti, pursuit of, like a pursuit of unreal. Agyan phalam, the result of ignorance. That means this. Ikshitam is seen. Tat agyo, experienced in the case of one who knows it and one who does not. Gya and agya, experienced in the case of one who knows it and one who does not. Yat means which. Mrig trishnika adau, about the mirage, etc. Mrig trishna. Na uchet. If this is not so, then vidam, for the wise person. Drishtri phalam, tangible or a seen fruit. Drishtri phal. Kim means what? Asmat, from this. Turning away from the unreal should be the result of knowledge. Okay. So if we are not turning away from the unreal, that means there's no knowledge yet. If you are still running after the unreal, there's no knowledge. So turning away from the unreal should be the result of knowledge. Attachment to the unreal is the result of ignorance. Such is seen to be the case of one who knows a mirage, etc. That means a person who knows it's a mirage, it's not a real water, will turn away from there. And one who does not else what tangible result do the knowers of reality gain? Again, he is putting a question in our mind. Think about it. He says, don't take my word for it. Think about it. It is very logical. So what do you gain by experiencing the Supreme? The vision of the world from the spiritual watchtower is explained in this verse. When you're one with God, how do you see this world? When you have a subjective experience, how do you see this world? So what would be the vision of the world when it's looked at without ahankar or without attachment to the body and without attachment to the mind and intellect? How does such an individual react at his physical, emotional, and intellectual levels? When he's looking at it from high up. That's why he says the result of the right knowledge, correct knowledge, is the removal of avidya. This is avidya, that when we think that we are the body, mind, and intellect. When you have transcended the intellect, you have got away from the persecutions of the matter. When you experience yourself and understand that you are not the body, mind, and intellect, you automatically move away from the anatma. Anatma is different from Brahma. Atma is part of Brahma, Anatma is everything else. Brahma bhinnam sarvam anatma. So anything other than Brahma is anatma. So when the spiritual experience comes, there is no identification with the matter. That's the point Shankaracharya ji is trying to make. There is a complete retirement from this concept that I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. Asato nivriti. There's a total cessation from the asat. And he talks about this mriga trishna over here. Because the result of the ignorance, agyan, is a pravriti. And pravriti, he says, it's like a mriga trishna. You want to quench your thirst from something which cannot quench your thirst. We want the ultimate bliss, and we think we can have that bliss from these temporary things. They don't have that. That mirage doesn't have the water. Mirage is just a mirage. The same way all this objective world, the things of this world, the places of this world, we think it can satisfy us completely, but they don't. They don't have the power to satisfy us completely. The satisfaction that is only in the complete blissful state. And he says the person who has come to apprehend his own real nature, he lives in peace and tranquility within himself, away from the persecutions of all vasanas and desires. What else will the man of realization gain? Let's see. Other than this, what else? The next verse. Agyan hriday granthe vinashaha yadi asheshata anicho vishyaha kimno pravrite karanam swataha. Agyan hriday granthe, of the knots of ignorance in the heart. And we have talked about this Hriday Granthi before. The knots of the ignorance in the heart, vinashaha, destruction, so that a Hriday Granthi gets destroyed. Yadi means if, asheshata, total. There's nothing remainder, ashesh, anicho, for the desireless person. Vishyaha, object. Kim no, what? Pravrite, to the egocentric action. Karanam, cause. Swata, natural. When the knots of ignorance in the heart have been totally destroyed, what natural cause can prompt a person who is averse to sense pleasures, to egocentric action? So let's remember what the knots of the hearts are. 3 knots: ignorance, desire, and action. If you remember that. Avidya, Kam, and Karam. Ignorance of reality at the intellectual level is called desire. At the mental level, thoughts. And at the physical level, actions. Okay, so this is the knot of the heart, Hriday Granthi. So he says that knot of the heart has been destroyed with the help of the sadhana. Over here, it does not mean that heart is not functioning. The physical heart is functioning. But this is a heart, knot of the heart, which starts from the ignorance. So essential personality of a person is always tied down by these 3 knots. Remember that. Personality I'm talking about, not the Atma. Personality. But when they are completely removed, the knowledge of the self is easily gained. Partial destruction of this heart of knot of the heart, we find it in deep sleep. Partial. That's why in the deep sleep we feel little blissful. But deep sleep leads to no realization. Every night we have a deep sleep, but we are not realized being. Okay. In order to have a realization, we need to practice consciously meditation and samadhi. But this annihilation of the knots has to be done completely. When a person gains the knowledge of the real, the infinite, the ignorance of the self ends. Talking about the lower self, the ego. When the ignorance has ended, the desires cannot arise. Excuse me. Desires are directly connected with the ignorance. Higher the ignorance or more the ignorance, more the worldly desires. When the desires are not there, actions cannot be. That's how they are connected. Avidya, Kam, and Karam. Having gained the knowledge of the self, an individual may play in the world outside, never involved with the ego and its desires. I always give you the example of an adult playing with the child with the toys. Playing, but playing for what? That's how a realized person does. So the man of realization has no desires, does not undertake any ego-prompted or desire-prompted activities. No personal desires. Just doing it for his sake. It's God's play. Doing everything for God. That's it. No personal desire, no personal agenda. So the man of realization has no pravriti, as all the possible impulses for actions, they have dried up. No personal agenda at all. That's how the man of realization lives. Let's stop it here. And we'll start with the next verse next Saturday. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.